parliamentarians are entitled to, and the public at large.
Tipperary TD Matty McGrath.
Welcome back. We're coming to you live from the Premier Broadcast Centre, Pearse Street in Neenah. I'm joined in studio now by Minister of State Alan Kelly. Alan Kelly, good morning.
Good morning, John.
No, sorry, I hadn't your fader up there. No, I don't know if you were listening to that interview with David McGuinness.
I did indeed, I heard it.
Yeah, so there were a few issues that he raised there. Oversupply of taxi licences, a 23% oversupply. Would you accept that?
Yeah, I actually got the figures done. I asked for the research to show it. I've no problem saying there's oversupply in urban areas, particularly Dublin. There's undersupply though in other areas in rural Ireland. That's why we created the rural Hackney licence.
Yeah.
But the oversupply issue, you've got to manage that within the doctrines of Irish and European law. And despite what the TTnh, which is their abbreviated title, or what they say, you can't just get rid of people's licences. I accept that in a laissez-faire approach to the industry over a number of years, particularly in the early noughties, there was too many licences given out to, in some cases to people.
So how do you rein in them, given the constraints that you're operating under?
Well, under competition law, you can't just take licences off people. You also have to ensure that, for instance, wheelchair licences, that they are provided. And by the way, we've an undersupply of them, and I'm trying to get more of them in. But the real way is through quality measures. Under national and European law, you have to obviously maintain people's entitlements, and the qualitative measures are ongoing all the time. Nobody has approached the industry in the level at which I have done. I've met with every single group on multiple occasions. The TTnh are only one of several groups, by the way. There's 6 or 7 of them. Yeah. There's 46 actions through a review I conducted. Virtually all of them are being implemented. And I also brought in the largest ever bill in relation to the taxi industry, passed through the all there a couple of months ago.
Okay, so
and,
is there
that's getting rid of all the people who were operating in the industry who shouldn't be. There's people driving taxis around this country who shouldn't be behind the wheel of a taxi because they have serious criminal records.
Yeah. But apart from that, to get back to the oversupply, is there anything that can be done to deal with that 23% overhang?
Yeah, there's 46 measures, Seamus. For instance, if you had the reference of double jobbing was brought up, you have to notify your employer now if you're applying for a licence. That never happened before to the same degree. And obviously certain employers would have issues with people driving taxis as well as doing their own job.
Of course they would, yeah.
So that aspect has been brought in. We've also brought in certain standards in relation to the taxis. Obviously you've seen the whole signage that's now on taxis, so that people have to make a special effort to be maintain their car, and the standards by which they maintain their car. The whole issue of renting taxis. Before you could rent a car, rent a licence, rent your insurance, rent equipment. Now you have to get the whole lot in one package. So that whole stuff.
Yeah, but David McGuinness says there's poor reinforcement of that, reinforcing of that on a spot check. He's inviting you to go on a spot check. He says there's an awful lot of people who are behind the wheels of taxis who shouldn't be.
I agree with him on that. Sure, that's why he's now brought in legislation. By the way, legislation which some of his members opposed, which was strange. But there's people driving taxis who shouldn't be allowed to get licences. But there was a lax attitude towards this for many years. But David McGuinness knows full well, because I've told his organisation on several occasions, the legislation that I recently passed allows me to put in place a whole range of new enforcement officers, and they're currently being in the process of being recruited and will be in place this year. In fact, I expect the number of enforcement officers to over double this year.
Well, there's only 9 in the entire country.
Well, I expect that to be in the 20s this year.
Yeah. So, and you think that will deal with the issue?
Absolutely. Working in conjunction with the Gardaí, because the Gardaí do have a role here as well as a very significant role, and that's going to deal with that. The other issue he raised is double jobbing, and some of the taxi organisations, they can be very urban centric and particularly Dublin centric. For instance, the taxis that operate in rural Ireland, in most cases, many of them wouldn't be able to exist.
No, for obvious reasons, they wouldn't have enough.
They wouldn't have enough income. So, they have to have a second job. So, is he saying that everyone in rural Ireland shouldn't have a taxi?
Well, no, but wouldn't it be possible for you as Minister to devise a system whereby people in rural areas could kind of double job, if we put it that way, and people in urban areas couldn't?
legally that would be very difficult, Seamus, and you can appreciate that you can't treat two people differently under the same law.
But it's different circumstances. I mean, it's a sparser population.
Well, that's why I created a Royal Hackney licence, which I've spoken on your programme about before, which I let your listeners know is now open for applications. I committed that it would be in place by January of this year. It is in place. So now communities around rural areas in Ireland can apply to have a Royal Hackney licence, which is a very low entry cost, and so can operate within a radius around their local village to bring people.
So hackneys rather than taxis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There is only one taximeter area in the entire county. Is that right?
There's only one taximeter area in the whole country. Yes.
Yeah. So no, but I mean in Tipperary there is only one taximeter area in Tipperary.
Yeah, well, if you're applying for a license, you would have to do a theory test, and you also have to do a geography test, a knowledge test, as it's more commonly known. Yeah. And the actual knowledge test, I believe, was far too easy up until a few years ago when I changed it. It's now actually very difficult, and to pass it, the pass rate is actually quite low, because I believe if you're getting into a taxi, the person driving should absolutely know the best way of getting you there. There's a whole load of new laws after being brought in that if a taxi driver takes you the wrong way or tries to up his fare, well, then he'll be dealt with. We can have penalty points in place. We also have methods of investigating these.
What about the signage on taxis? I think that was tackled by your department, was it?
Absolutely. I mean, the National Transport Authority, the authority who are the regulator here, but I work very closely with him, obviously, as the minister in charge. The signage is important because it professionalises the industry. I have to say also, TTnh and what they're referencing about double jobbing, there was people who weren't really fully committed to the industry who would operate. They'd have a licence and they'd operate only on certain weekends in urban areas in order to build up their reserves for whatever it is, going over to see Manchester United or this, that or the other. And they'd be coming from certain areas of Dublin or Cork, and they'd only take fares to areas that weren't where they were living. They were putting their roof sign into their boot, and many of the people who were working with them or living beside them didn't even know they were drivers. They weren't fully committed to the industry. Well, now they've signage on their cars, so everyone will know they're a taxi driver as well as...
And they must always have signage on.
Always, it's mandatory. And if you don't have signage on their car, it's an offence.
Yeah. So would you lose your licence then if you don't?
Their investigation, and if it's found, you can either get penalty points or you can lose your licence. Certainly, it's an offence not to have your signage.
All right, thanks very much.
One just thing, Seamus, before we go, I just wanted to make reference to something that's quite a positive thing, so I just don't want people to miss out on it, and that is that my department has opened up the Sports Capital programme.